Hey everyone, welcome back, and if you're new, welcome. My name is Adelina and I make videos about living in my tiny house and living intentionally. Today I thought I would go over the 10 things I no longer buy for living in my tiny house. Now, to be honest, some of these things are things that I stopped buying years ago. And some are things that I have just stopped buying since I've been living in my tiny house on wheels. The first thing that I no longer spend money on is a Costco membership. Costco is a discount bulk item store that we have in North America. I'm not sure if it is in other countries as well, but I used to have a Costco membership, which was great when my kids were living at home. But living in the tiny house, you don't have room for bulk items. So when I want to buy toilet paper, I only want to buy 8 rolls. I don't need a pack of 36. The same with paper towels. I mean, Costco does have great prices on things, but I find that the portions are too big for fresh for me to eat in time. The non-perishables are just, the sizes are too huge for my storage space, and I just don't need that many of each thing. So I have just decided that I'm okay with spending a little bit more to buy smaller sizes of things. So I don't want, a 2-liter of ketchup. I just need a 500 milliliter that fits in my fridge. There's so many things at Costco that are really attractive because they're so well priced, but the sizes are too big. I don't have the storage space. I'll never get through them because it's just me and the cat. So I just stopped spending money on a Costco membership. If there's any items that I do want to buy at Costco, I have friends that have Costco memberships. I know when I bought myself my Vitamix a couple of years ago as my Christmas present to myself, I bought it from Costco because it was a really good price. But in general, there's very few things that I need at Costco, and so I just stopped spending the money on a Costco membership. Keeping in the theme of memberships, the second thing that I no longer spend money on is a gym membership. I used to have a membership to Good Life Fitness. I just never went. So this is something that I stopped spending money on before I moved into the tiny house. I just found that I never went to the gym, certainly not enough to make the membership worthwhile. I think that if you are really like going to the gym, then it's useful. For me, what I really liked were the classes, but I found that they were so packed and so crowded, and if you didn't get there super early, you couldn't find a spot. And so what was the point? So I stopped spending money on a gym membership. I did spend money on some yoga classes. In general, I just work out at home doing yoga or go for walks, things like that. So I no longer spend money on a gym membership. The third thing I don't spend money on is magazine subscriptions. I used to be quite the magazine person. They were an impulse buy. As I was at the checkout at the grocery store, I would see the magazines and I would buy them, or I would spend time at Indigo chapters having a coffee and just wandering around, and I would go through the magazine section and end up taking home 2 or 3. I used to have a couple of magazine subscriptions, and I found that other than for the first, quick go through, I never actually went through them. I would save them because I would think there was something in there I wanted to sort of maybe use again, a recipe or something like that, but I never got to them, and then they would just end up piling up and stacking up in my house. It was total waste of money. If I want to read a magazine, I will go to the library where they have them all. There's very little in a paper magazine that you can't read online. So I never spend money on magazines anymore. The fourth thing I no longer spend money on is music and movies, DVDs and CDs. I have a subscription to Spotify, and that's where I get my music from. I'm a big podcast listener, and so I listen to podcasts on that while I'm working or while I'm walking. It didn't make sense to buy hard copies of anything. I used to buy my music from Apple Music or iTunes, but again, it was getting expensive. And when I discovered Spotify, that just made so much more sense to me because I have unlimited music, unlimited podcasts, and it's a much more efficient way. And I don't end up with a bunch of CDs sitting on a shelf. I actually don't have a DVD player in my living room here. If there is a movie that I do want to watch, I will just rent it. And that is much more economical because there are very few movies that I will watch over and over again. It just makes sense. So I no longer spend money on music, hard copies of music and movies. So the fifth thing that I no longer spend money on are greeting cards. Birthday cards, Christmas cards, Valentine's cards, Easter cards, none of that. I find that that is such a waste of money and it's so commercial. And I don't know about you, but I open a card, I read what's in it, and then I throw it away. I never keep them. If I want to send somebody a nice message, I will write them a letter, or I will preferably give them a call. I prefer to do those things, via, in person when you can, or now via text or phone call or FaceTime or something like that. It's just such a waste of money to buy cards. So I stopped doing that years ago, and I don't think anybody has missed it at all. The sixth thing that I no longer spend money on is cable TV. To be honest, I haven't had cable in probably 6 years. I gave it up years ago because I found that other than a few cooking shows, or my youngest and I used to watch the National Geographic channel, sometimes together, or Ghost Hunters on the Travel Channel. But then he stopped watching it. The kids weren't watching TV because they were always on their computers, and it was just a waste of money. I think I was spending, it was over $100 for all of the channels that I had, and nobody was watching it. I have not missed it. Between Netflix and YouTube, I find I just don't need it. Sorry, the sun was shining in and I just realized it was making weird shapes on my face, so I apologize for that. So the seventh thing that I no longer buy are paperback books. I am a voracious reader, and I have sets of books that have been my favorites that I have read over and over and over again. For example, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, I've probably read 15 times. So I do have some favorite sets that I have and I keep, but in general, I find that I read a book once and then what do I do with it? It just sits there. So I prefer to get my books from the library, or sometimes friends will, recommend a book that they've read and then they will lend it to me. In the tiny house, I don't have a lot of room for storing books. I have a small bookshelf where I keep my favorites. And my best friend's dad was a writer, one of my favorite writers, Dave Duncan, and so I have a lot of his books that were gifted that he signed, so those are very special to me. I will always keep those. I will sometimes wander through a used bookstore, and if I find something there that I like, or a charity shop that has books, and I might buy one, read it, and then redonate it. But in general, I just do not spend money any longer on paperback books. The eighth thing that I no longer spend money on are knickknacks and collectibles. In my previous life, when I was much younger, married, and the kids were little, I used to have a lot of things that I collected. Cherished teddies, I can't even remember. I had so many things that I collected. And they were a lot of work to dust and just sort of keep track of. When I got divorced, when I moved into my own place, I got rid of all of that stuff. And I've not started collecting anything since. The only collection that I kept was my Fiestaware dishes, which I guess are collectibles, but they're useful. So I kept those and I love those. But I no longer buy seasonal decor. I have a few Christmas things that I've kept and I pull out every year. Very few. I gave most of my Christmas things to the charity shops. I no longer buy collectibles, and I try not to buy any home decor that I don't specifically have a use for. And that has saved me so much money, and I just don't have room in the tiny house. So when I moved in here, people would come and visit and they always wanted to bring me things. And I had to really discourage people in advance. I don't have room for anything, so I no longer spend money on any knickknacks, tchotchkes, collectibles, and home decor items. The ninth thing that I no longer buy are K-cups for my Keurig coffee maker. K-cups are handy, but they're so incredibly wasteful. Even the ones that are recyclable are difficult to recycle, and I guess there are some compostable ones, but they're expensive. I bought the single serve Keurig for the tiny house because it was so nice and small, and then I ordered a special cup for it for my own coffee. Better coffee. I can make it exactly the strength that I want, and I get to save the environment just a little bit. I feel much better about that. The coffee grounds are compostable, or you can use them in your garden. I find that my coffee is much better when I get to use my own coffee blends, so I no longer spend money on K-cups. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Now she's gonna bite me. The 10th thing that I no longer spend money on is coffee creamer, and I have a video for my coffee creamer recipe. I don't eat dairy. I was buying especially the Silk coffee creamer, and it was fine, and then I started playing around with my own coffee creamer recipe, and I find that mine is so much better. It's cashew based. I get to control the flavors. Sometimes I make gingerbread, sometimes I make French vanilla, sometimes I make pumpkin spice, and sometimes I just make plain. But I always have it. It's always fresh, and I save so much money because I have several cups a day, and I find that I was going through those small coffee creamer containers really often, and they were, $3, almost $4 each. Not only is my recipe better, and I'll link it down below, but I find that I save money and it's just healthier. Those are just some of the things I no longer spend money on. Yours might be very different, and you might find that spending money on some of the things I don't is really valuable to you. It's not that my list should be your list. I hope it was helpful. If you find value in my videos, please subscribe. I noticed that 85% of my viewers are not subscribed, so I'm talking to you. Please hit that subscribe button. Apparently the little bell button is important as well. I really appreciate it. I'd love to have you part of my family. Comment below and tell me some of the things that you no longer spend money on. I would be really interested to see what your list is. Anyways, thanks for watching. I will talk to you soon.